So welcome back, everyone. That was a perfectly lovely lunch. And we all are rushing back because this is the fireside chat that everyone really wants to listen to, although it's not much of a fireside, it's a flower side. Yeah, we don't want to do that.
Correct.
I don't think we want to do that. But I'd like to welcome our speakers here today. Jason Matheny is going to be interviewing General Jack Shanahan. I introduced Jason as the president of Georgetown. For those of you who are confused, it was just me who was confused. He's not. But I know Jason from when he was the associate deputy D&I and director of IARPA. Back in the day when Jason was really driving technology development, innovation for all of the intelligence agencies, and did just a fabulous job. But since then, he's been on to some bigger and better things in terms of being the founding father of the CSET, which is, I need to read more about the CSET because everybody's quoting it, and you put out some amazing publications, so I've got to read more. He's also a member of the National Security Commission on AI. And then with us today is General Jack Shanahan, who also is in a leadership role on AI at the Department of Defense. And so with that, I'm gonna let you introduce General Shanahan. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Ellen. I'm going to go straight into the questions. We have an hour with General Shanahan. I've got about 15 questions that I want to cover, and then I want to leave about 20 minutes for open Q&A. But first, I just want to express my deep appreciation. I know you've got a whole organization to run, so for you to take an hour out of your day, plus like 45 minutes on each way for commute, if you're lucky. You're on one of the Lime scooters today, I'm assuming.
Of course. Yeah. How'd you know that?
Yeah, I'm an Intel guy.
I just left it out on the courtyard.
That's good. I'm sure it's being vandalized as we speak, but we really appreciate you spending the time. So first, just as background, can you tell us what the JAIC is and what you do?
Yes, first of all, let me thank you for all you've done. We treat artificial intelligence, people like me, latecomers to this, as breaking overnight news, and you've been in this for a long time. So the work that you've done in places like IARPA, your work here with the CSET, the White House Select Committee on AI, and now, of course, the National Security Commission on AI. So you've been setting the stage for AI for an awful long time for the government. So thanks, Jason, everything you're doing. In terms of the Joint AI Center, what is it? Why does it exist? For those of you who have never heard of this project, it won't be hard to Google it. It's Project Maven. I was the director of that for 2 years in the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence. And Maven, in the simplest way I can put it, was a way to use artificial intelligence, specifically computer vision, machine learning, to allow analysts to get through volumes and volumes of full motion video in a much quicker way. And it was a Pathfinder project, and it was designed to bring in commercial technology, find a way to get it into the department at speed and at scale, two things that we had not been able to solve in the Department of Defense up to that point broadly across the board. And we showed that it was successful enough. It still has a long way to go, I think, to show real return on investment. But it was successful enough where the Deputy Secretary of Defense decided we needed an organization for the entire Department of Defense, not just intelligence, whose entire mission would be to accelerate DoD's adoption and integration of AI to achieve mission impact at scale. So the organization was officially formed just over a year ago. There wasn't much at the beginning because, as is often the case in the Pentagon, you don't have any money, you don't have any people, you have a piece of paper that says you are now an organization that's supposed to be up to speed very quickly. So the intent of the organization was fielding and delivery of AI capabilities across the Department of Defense. That's what was our charter, and we can talk more about the rest of the implications of that decision.
And how does that differ then from other organizations that are responsible for pieces of AI within the department, like DARPA, SCO, the labs within the different services?
Distilled to its very essence, in a very simplistic way of talking about this, we are AI now. The other organizations you mentioned are AI next. I think that's a helpful breakdown of who's doing what. It's more complicated than that. The idea of we're focusing on taking existing capabilities and get them into the field. And another reason we stood up the JAIC, the Joint AI Center, was to get across the technology valley of death. As Jason knows very well, having worked on these projects himself in IARPA, the incredible technologies that come out of these research labs, but the challenge is really getting them put in at scale across any organization, whether it's the intelligence community or the Department of Defense. It's not a technology problem, it's not a people problem, it's an engineering problem about scaling into weapon systems or into to other systems that, in the case of artificial intelligence, were developed in a time before AI, and it's very hard to do. So that was what we're really focused on from the very beginning. Now, the relationship we have with those organizations is such as that we're working very hard day in and day out to find a couple of projects that are advanced enough in their technology development, in an acronym that won't make a lot of sense to most of you, but TRL, Technology Readiness Level, say 6, 7, 8, or above, that's just close enough to be able to transition. Can we pull that out of DARPA? Can we pull that out of the Strategic Capabilities Office? Or can we pull it out of the Defense Innovation Unit on the West Coast, who we work very closely with, to begin to get it to the rest of the Department of Defense? It really is about finding a way to get across that technology value death.
So starting a new organization within the Pentagon that's focused on the technology priority that's listed in the National Security Strategy and the National Defense Strategy can't be easy. So can you tell us what you've learned from standing up such an organization within the Pentagon? What have been the biggest challenges? What have been the biggest surprises?
Yeah, well, it's the Big Bang Theory. You have to create something out of nothing, which in the Department of Defense is never a trivial task. We've had to create this organization from the beginning. And as I said, we didn't have, a year ago, we had maybe 10 people. I wasn't even officially confirmed into the position yet. I had really no money to speak of. We didn't have a place to work as a team. And a year into this, we now have almost 120 people when we have contractors included. We have a very healthy budget for the next fiscal year, which begins just in a week. We have an entire facility or a building, floor of a building over in Crystal City. So it's a real organization. I do get frustrated sometimes, having worked on Project Maven for 2 years, that we're not moving fast enough. This is such an imperative for the country that I know we need to move faster. And yet when I stand back and look at the forest instead of the branches on the trees, I realize we've actually accomplished a lot in the past year just getting the organization going. But when you asked about some of the biggest challenges, I guess I would put it in a way that we're trying to build a startup culture and a startup organization as part of the institutional bureaucracy. That's not easy to do. We have to do both. If I'm going to get funding over the next 5 years, I have to learn to speak the language of the institution and advocate for that money. I don't have angel investors that I go to. I have the Congress, who demands accountability, and I have organizations in the department that ask me to prove why we're asking for, or why we need the money we need. But on the other hand, to really embrace AI the way that, I know Jack Clark and Raj Shah will be up here after us, talking about how fast commercial industry is capable of moving in this world, we have to get that startup culture right. So it's a fine balance, and sometimes it's hard to get it right. And I really worry day in, day out that the process begins to dominate product. I can't let that happen, which is why DIU is so effective. It's tight, it's small, it's agile. Can we take that same approach as we scale across the entire department?
For the challenges, how many of them come down to data and data policies? How much of it comes down to access to compute, access to talent, the other kinds of resources that we heard today?
When we spent 2 years building what the AI fielding pipeline looks like. It's not any different for the Department of Defense than it is for any company trying to embrace artificial intelligence. And what we learned is what all those organizations and companies and what you learned in places like IARPA, 80% of our time and resources are spent on the enabling functions, not on the algorithm itself. The companies do this for a living. They're very good at it. Commercial companies put out algorithms. The most talented people in the country that have been working on these, and these startups to the biggest telecoms and data and cloud companies in the world, they know how to do technology. What we're faced with, as you were suggesting, is just data management being one of our core challenges. How do you find, clean, curate, label, take that data, train an algorithm against it, take that model, and then integrate it into the system never designed for AI. So I call that the bookends. So in the middle, you have your training your model, but on the other ends of that, you have all the other enabler functions, which turned out to be, I won't say more difficult than we expected because we didn't know what to expect, but it matches exactly what people like Andrew Ng would say, here is what's going to happen to you when you try to embark on an AI journey. So not giving up in frustration, which is very easy to do, which is why we stood up the JAIC, because too many people were stopping projects. They didn't know how to get through the data management problem. They didn't get through the integration, sustainment, and long-term continuous integration, continuous development of algorithms, which is a whole story by itself.
And can you tell me about some of the applications that you're prioritizing and how you picked those as priorities to start with?
You know, again, some of this goes back to people like Andrew Ng, and we had advice from a lot of different luminaries in AI, in academia and commercial industry. Andrew Moore in his previous role at CMU, and a whole bunch of others, whose message was consistent. Start small with a manageable, bounded problem. Show that you can get success out of it, and then figure out how to scale. And that was the approach we took with Maven. I mean, we didn't start with Maven with an artificial intelligence answer, then we went out in search of a problem. Our problem was bounded. It was too much video for an Intel analyst to look at. It was excruciatingly painful for analysts to sit there and look at video for 12, 13 hours a day. So we knew there had to be a solution. It was in the form of computer vision in commercial industry. But in terms of the JAIC, we started with two problems that already were underway. In one case, it's predictive maintenance on an H-60 helicopter. Special Operations Command and a particular unit under it had some prescience here and putting sensors on the helicopter and keeping the data that was being collected from those sensors, and then we're able to join what is already underway in artificial intelligence, machine learning, to do something with that data. And it was a particular problem with the helicopters. In a certain condition, you could get sand into the engines, very high temperature, and it would potentially fuse the rotor blades. Very bad situation. Could you predict when the likelihood of that would exceed a threshold that you might have to replace the engine? So we embarked on that with Special Operations Command, with the Army AI Task Force, with Carnegie Mellon, who are actually the ones developing the model for that. And that has been underway now for really the past year. So we've actually delivered capabilities on that one. We'll move to Army, Navy, and Air Force versions of that helicopter. And the other one, which was a natural fit for us because Maven had started it, is humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. Again, two specific parts of that. We didn't make them up. They were being asked of us from the people on the front lines. In this case, we were looking at how do you detect fire line perimeters, show a probability where that is in real time using full motion video. In this case, it's semantic segmentation is the actual artificial intelligence, machine learning piece that we're doing. And then another one is flood assessment, flood damage assessment, road obstructions, building damage assessment. Those had been underway in various places, but we took what was already existing in Project Maven and repurposed it for us in the JAIC because it's continental United States, it's not an intelligence operation, it's defense support to civil authorities. And the other really, really strong benefit of that one is there are a lot of people who have some reservations about working with the Department of Defense on AI. Everybody wants to work with the Department of Defense on HADR, Humanitarian Assistance Disaster Relief. It's a very good one for people to get into, from the biggest companies to NGOs to other international partners like Singapore. I believe we have a Singapore representative today in the audience that we're talking with them on some collaboration opportunities on this very subject, on HADR. Then we've just started, we're a couple of months into cyber defense, which results have yet to be determined, and then we'll get more into warfighting operations over the course of the next year. So those are the first real three, and then the fourth one going bigger.
Looking further out, say 10 years, where do you think the most important applications of AI will be for national security?
Every aspect of the Department of Defense can be improved somehow through artificial intelligence. The hard part, it really is, the challenge for us is of all the lessons we've learned, the one that I like to repeat is the importance of problem framing. Again, it's not earth-shattering to anybody who's done AI in commercial industry, but spending the amount of time up front to really understand what AI can and cannot do for you, and do you have the data even to embark on that project? And if you don't, you might choose a different answer. There might be just some rules-based algorithm is just fine. So once you understand what AI can do, then you jump into it. I'd say right now in the near term, the biggest return on investment is what you would expect. It's the sort of prosaic things. It's the quotidian getting through business processes faster, right? It's spreadsheet analysis. It's taking volumes of data and finding a signal deep into that noise. Those are what happens every day. In my view, as we get further and further out, the reason for Project Maven, we were actually called the Algorithmic Warfare Cross-Functional Team. That's our official name. by the former Deputy Secretary of Defense, because he envisioned a world of algorithm against algorithm. And if I look out into that future, I think the biggest benefits will be from something like AI-enabled mission command. How do I bring operations and intelligence closer together where the products of one are available instantly to the other? So we no longer have operations and intelligence and sensors and platforms. We have all of that combined, and we have humans and machines teamed in such a way that people get to sit back and think more about the problem and make better and maybe even faster decisions. So it's the idea of, if I look out 10 years, I think of human-machine teaming. I think of moving from perception to reasoning to context to, dare I say it, knowledge, which is a little bit hard at this point to imagine how quickly we get there. But then AI is infused in everything the department is doing, and we just don't even realize it's part of the fabric anymore. There is a reluctance to understand AI in the first place, and yet people have it embedded in their personal electronic devices. If we get it right in the Department of Defense, it's ubiquitous. We just don't even know it's there. But it's a long way between where we are today and collecting really messy, dirty data and wrangling it, munging it, all the way to that little bit more of a visionary future.
In a few of the discussions this morning, the concept of AI safety, assurance, and reliability came up. Can you tell us what the JAIC is doing on those topics?
As I say in a lot of settings when I'm asked about this part of it, I've been in uniform for over 35 years, and I'm spending more time thinking serious about the safe, lawful, and ethical use of AI than I have at any other point in my history. And really, it's a product of where I am in the organization as the director of it. We take it very seriously. Everything we do comes with a context of, are we going to use this AI in a way that follows what the precepts the department has always had, which is it robust? Is it reliable? Do we have some element of transparency to it? Is it going to be used safely, lawfully, in an ethical manner? So within the JAIC itself, I have a strategic engagement and policy team. They are chartered with the ethics piece of this. So we're working very closely with the Defense Innovation Board, who are just about putting the finishing touches on their AI principles of defense, which they'll make a recommendation to the Secretary of Defense. And then working very closely with academia and industry, all of whom, a lot of big companies in industry now are putting out their own AI principles. We're trying to absorb what works for the Department of Defense, looking in the near term of bringing in someone I say ethicist, that got a little misreported the last time I said it, but it was my own fault. It'll be someone who's a technical standards / ethicist, that as we develop the models and the algorithms together, that they can look at that to make sure the process is abiding by sort of our rules of the road, as we say. But I'm also interested in down the road getting some help from the outside on sort of those deeper philosophical questions. I don't focus them day to day because of my Charter 2 field now, but it's clear we have to think carefully about this.
Great. So it seems like AI, even maybe compared to a lot of other emerging technologies, has a lot of potential for misreporting in the press, often like hype cycles and investment. What do you think the public might be getting most wrong about AI?
Yeah, this is not my original thought, but when you look back on the history of disruptive technologies anywhere, but let's say in the Department of Defense, I have firmly in the court of, we tend to be far too optimistic about the short-term advances, and yet we underestimate the long-term implications and advances. And I'd say that's where we are right now in AI. The hype is a little dangerous because it's uninformed most of the time, and sometimes it's a Hollywood-driven killer robots, Terminator, Skynet, that worst-case scenario. I can tell you, I live this every day, and I don't see that worst-case scenario anytime in my immediate future. So I think we went a little overboard. You've lived it in the cycles of history on AI. It's here to stay, and I am optimistic in the sense that we are underestimating what it can do in the future, and that the advances probably will become very rapid at some point. And everything from data management becomes easier and becomes second nature to just do AI, and we'll be a little surprised by how fast it advances. What I don't know right now is what that time frame looks like. Is it 2 years? Is it 5 years? Is it 25 years? But I think it's just the hype is, we've oversold the capabilities a little bit, and which leads to a little pessimism and cynicism. I do not see an AI winter on the horizon, not at all. I think it's just the opposite. I see every day new examples of companies and institutions figuring out new ways to use AI. So I'm very optimistic. I'm bullish about the future.
Are there any topics related to AI that you think receive insufficient attention, that you think we should be discussing more, either in public or in the context of national security?
The only one I would suggest is just an overall campaign of education and training so people understand what it is and what it is not. I believe that it's as important to understand the limitations of AI as it is to understand the potential and the strengths of it. As the National Security Commission on AI does its interim report and then its long-term recommendations, I'm putting a lot of weight on your shoulders, Jason, because I think you can come with some recommendations for the entire society. This is well beyond DOD. It's well beyond the government. It's really our entire society. Do we embrace AI as our future with all its implications, good and potentially bad? Job losses, the ethical concerns about how it could be used. Do we understand it? Do we at least all start from a point of common understanding, or do we jump in it with just vastly misinformed, ill-informed, or hyped understanding of what AI is all about? So I think if I were to pick one, it was this idea of, can we get us on a better understanding of what AI really is?
Is there an American approach to AI that you think distinguishes either our approach or the approach of democratic nations or NATO allies from those of other nations? Is there something characteristic about our approach? And what are the advantages and disadvantages of that approach relative to others? Yeah,
rather than say American, I would stick with the sort of the democratic open society approach versus one that is based on authoritarian repressive regimes. I think there is a distinction to be had. I will say I believe we're in a contest for the character of the international order in the digital age. And it's very important that we get this right. Everything we do is very open and transparent. We talk about ethics, not just on the research side. I talk about ethics, and I'm responsible for fielding capabilities. I do not see that same approach in Russia or China. I just don't see it. There are suggestions that the Chinese, Russians are interested in ethics. I do not see that coming out of the government institutions. I see just the opposite. It's fielding very fast. I don't know what kind of rigor and discipline they put behind their test and evaluation. What sets us apart is our ability to do, or our focus on real rigor in test evaluation, validation, and verification before we field a capability that could have lives at stake. So that idea of being, the idea of trust, transparency, collaboration, openness about what we're trying to do. Now, the Department of Defense, to be fair, has been criticized for not being open and transparent on certain things in the past. But in this area, I think we're actually doing fairly well, trying to say what we're doing and why we're doing it. I do not see that same approach coming out of China or Russia.
So thinking about countries that might deploy AI systems before they're fully tested, has the department been thinking about how to defeat those systems before they become unsafe in a battlefield?
Well, you'll not be surprised I won't fully answer that question.
Yeah.
I will say that you know much better than I do, but I have a new appreciation for the fragility and brittleness of the systems that are in place today, whatever country we're talking about, because they're all based generally off the same open source models, frameworks, and standards. So they're not fully hardened yet, as we say. We know we have to protect the most important components of the AI pipeline, beginning with data. We must protect our data, we must protect our supply chains, we must protect the models themselves. So I would say we're taking an approach that acknowledges all those, like we've done with every technology, makes it a little harder with this one because it is such an open source, and it's a commercial technology, it's not a military technology. On the other hand, we're equally interested in where vulnerabilities are that we could take advantage of. I will say there's no differences. I think of electronic warfare as a pretty good action, reaction, counteraction, counteraction, or now cyber. It's kind of the same way, offensive cyber, defensive cyber. So I think that's a useful analogy. It's just AI might move a lot faster than that.
So the JAIC recently posted a large number of job openings covering pretty broad range of disciplines, of technical specialties, as well as policy specialties. Can you tell us a little bit about those openings, especially for folks in the room who will be looking for jobs either soon after the end of this meeting or later in the year?
We're very close, maybe within a day or two, of AI.mil being available. We do own the domain AI.mil. We will have our links to the recruitment page on there, should anybody be interested. But I said at the beginning, as we formed, it was not just to do product delivery, it was to do a center of excellence for AI. So we have job openings that are everything from strategic engagement, policy, test and assessment, foreign engagement, industry engagement, but our core shortfalls right now, just like everybody else, our glaring shortfalls are in sort of the core data science, artificial intelligence expertise, and then product development and product delivery. The ones that, what I really need is anybody has commercial experience and government experience, bringing both of those in is the best possible answer. But I also have bringing people in, like our chief technology officer, who spent 25 years in Silicon Valley. He's serving because he wants to give something back to the public sector. When he comes to the table, he brings just a completely different viewpoint, and on day one, he made an impact to the organization because he came with a commercial view of how fast we need to be moving and what does product development and product delivery look like in Silicon Valley or Austin or Boston or New York versus what it looks like in the Department of Defense. Yeah, and so that's where, if I were to say what I most need, AI/ML expertise and product development expertise.
So about a quarter of the audience is from industry. What would you say is the best way for industry to engage with the department, and why should they engage with the department on AI projects? What's the comparative gain for them?
Yeah, we need to do a better at emphasizing the importance of collaboration between government, industry, and academia. I call it that triangle. And in artificial intelligence, it's probably more important than anything else I've seen in the importance of that. On Project Maven, we were very aggressive in going out and seeking commercial solutions, even the smallest startups. But it took a lot of very hands-on engagement because these small companies, and even some of the bigger companies, were not working with the Department of Defense on artificial intelligence. They didn't know how to find the Department of Defense, what we were looking for, and they didn't know where to begin when it came to doing contracting and acquisition with the Department of Defense. We had a lot of work to do there. There's taking the same approach for the JAIC is we want to work with every possible partner. My challenge right now is I don't need pitches. What I need to do is say, here is our well-defined problem. Do you have a solution for that? So we're doing more industry days. Last year we did a Maven JAIC industry day, which was very broad. The feedback, the criticism we got is, could you be more specific? So for each of our lines of effort, we will have more narrowly focused industry days where we'll solicit from industry and we'll have white papers and we'll see if those white papers progress to follow-on discussions and potentially to contract. But we're very interested in working with everybody, from the smallest companies up to the biggest companies in the world.
Okay. So a half of this audience are students. What should they be thinking about as they complete their studies here? What advice do you have for those who might want to work at the intersection of AI and national security?
As short as we are in the country of AI, ML, various forms of artificial intelligence expertise, we have a lot of it. We have a lot of technical experts in this country. We have a lot of very bright students coming out of universities, places like Georgetown that are at the top of the game in policy and national security. What I need, if I can find a combination of people who can do both, to bridge the gap between the tech community and the policy national security community. Because what we end up with today, and I'm guilty of it as anybody, so I'm not throwing the brick without some justification, is we have very senior people who just don't understand the artificial intelligence ecosystem and the technology. And we're trying to make decisions, big decisions about where the department is going. Same in terms of developing future policies and national security. I will plagiarize and paraphrase pretty roughly. I think it was Sir William Francis Butler said, "The nation that separates its scholars from its warriors will have its thinking done by cowards and it's fighting done by fools." There is this idea of the tech world having a better understanding of what you're actually developing and how it could be used for good or for bad. And then on the other side, the people that are making these big security and policy decisions, do you really understand what this technology can do as a force for good or as a force for bad. It's a technology. It could be used in either way. So that's what I'm looking for, so that somebody could come in. I need attitude and aptitude, number one and number two. Either way, you can reverse the order. But beyond that, somebody that can bridge that gap between the policy world and the tech world. And I think the panel after me can probably talk some more about what that should look like.
Great. And are there specialized fellowships within the department for folks who are pretty sure that they want to spend some time within the department?
There are. Most of those are run in other places of the department. What we're trying to do is put together a plan to have some fellowships within just for the JAIC. I did have 2 college interns with us this summer, mostly by serendipity. One came from Cornell. He was a freshman. He's going into his sophomore year. And I had my personal mic drop moment was he left for the summer, and he had an office call with me. And unsolicited, he said, the JAIC is a cool place to work. And I was done at that point. I wasn't expecting that, to be honest with you. But it is a cool place to work. We are trying to move fast and get the right kind of people in the door. And we do have opportunities for people. But it's going to take us a little while because it's, again, starting a new organization.
So I have one more question before I turn it over to the audience. You have been, I think, unusually open and candid and clear in the way that you've talked about the JAIC, and I think you've earned a lot of goodwill from that, both within the national security community and from academia and industry. What was the reason for that? Because I mean, you could have opted for a different strategy. One that had a little bit more of a bunker mentality. And second, what have been both the benefits and the costs of pursuing that strategy?
My ultimate rationale has been that in this emerging technology, disruptive world that we're in today, many of the fastest advances are coming from the commercial industry. It's not that they're not happening in DoD. The research is as good as it's ever been in the department. But in this place of AI, cloud technologies, it's happening so fast that if we're not open, if we're not transparent, at least to talk about what we're trying to do, then people will assume on our behalf, and sometimes those assumptions will be on the worst case as departments going straight to killer robots. What I'm trying to do is reset the conversation a little bit and say AI can be used for good. We have a lot of people in harm's way. Humans are very fallible. In combat, they are particularly so. And friction and chaos of war is going to make people make bad decisions occasionally. Can we use artificial intelligence to make better decisions, to make more informed judgments about what might be happening, to reduce the potential for civilian casualties or collateral damage? I'm an optimist. I believe you can. It will not eliminate it. Never. It's war. Bad things are going to happen. But there's a deterrent effect of not wanting to fight in the first place. But if we have to fight, that these capabilities can be used in the best possible way. So my rationale has been we ought to be talking about it. And I don't want to shy away from it. I'm not going to go straight to lethal autonomous weapon systems. But I do want to say we will use artificial intelligence in our weapon systems for the reasons I just stated. It's to give us a competitive advantage. It's to save lives and help deter war from happening in the first place, us, our allies, and our partners. And if we don't do that, I think we're worse off for it. And I'm not sure everybody agrees with me. I will be honest, that some people think full speed ahead. I don't care what commercial industry thinks. We're just going to go do this. This is too important to get it wrong. AI is critical for national security. Table stakes are very high right now, and I think we ought to do everything we can to win and not lose.
Great. So I think we have some microphones set up. And while we wait for folks to approach it, one really quick question. Based on what you said about 80% of the investment really being on this enabling infrastructure, it seems like a really good move to have set up the JAIC within the CIO office. Was that strategic? I mean, was the understanding from the start, a lot of this is going to be about connecting pipes and getting databases to work with one another?
Yeah, very intentionally by the Defense Department's Chief Information Officer, Dana Deasy, a man who came from industry and knew from the moment he walked in the door the way the department needs to move is towards digital modernization. He says digital modernization. I say that's synonymous with warfighting modernization. As we move from a hardware-centric world to a software-driven age, from industrial environment to information age, we have to do a couple of things simultaneously. One is AI, cyber, cloud, and C3, command, control, communications. It's those 4 pillars of digital modernization converging in such a way that will make the difference, I believe, between success and failure in a future fight. And so by putting it under there, he's the one responsible for that digital modernization. So rather have it as an appendage somewhere else, which is an open discussion a few years down the road, to be honest with you. If he were here, he would tell you, we'll see where it should be 5 years from now. But in terms of getting the department moving with speed, with alacrity toward digital modernization, it's the right place to be.
Thank you. First question.
Hi, good afternoon, General. This is Scott Massiani with Federal News Network. I'm a reporter. I understand that you're teaming up with GSA for some of their centers of excellence. So I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the rationale behind that, and then secondly, what some of the expectations are, considering you're still a fairly new organization.
This is just inked, as we say, so the details, I don't have a lot of details beyond. We wanted a partnership with GSA because of their centers of excellence concept to include concerning an AI center of excellence. But they have been very forward-leaning, coming to us saying, I know what you're going through, we know what you're trying to achieve, let us help you. On the contracting and acquisition side of it, which has been incredibly helpful, because in addition to trying to hire the right people, our other big challenge is contracting and acquisition and moving the speed of agile methodology. So that is a big part of it, and they've offered to help us pretty much in every single line of effort. Everything from intelligent business automation, once someone would say robotic process automation, we've got to start on that, to some other help in contracting acquisition, and to our JAIC, or our Joint Common Foundation, which is that platform that will be common to the JAIC, that will be a place for data, tools, libraries, DevSecOps environment, basically a platform as a service. So they're offering to help us in each one of those areas, and they have a chief of their technology section who has been so supportive of understanding where the JAIC is trying to go, and has immediately jumped in to offer the full support of GSA. So I'm very appreciative of what they're done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Michael Clare with the Arms Control Association. Jason, thank you for your good questions. And General Shanahan, thank you for your candor. So we in the arms control community are concerned about the impact of AI on nuclear stability. And we could see on one hand that having automated intelligence could help with sifting through incoming information at a very high speed in a nuclear crisis, that it could be an advantage, it could be a stabilizing force. We also worry that the opposite is true, that machines and artificial intelligence could be jammed, it could provide misleading information, it could accelerate the pace of events beyond human capacity to follow, and lead to unintended escalation in a crisis, and lead to unintended nuclear weapons use. So I ask what your thoughts are on this.
A couple of different thoughts. First of all, you will find no stronger proponent of sort of integration of AI capabilities writ large into the Department of Defense. But there's one area where I pause, and it has to do with nuclear command and control. If there are those in the audience that read some recent articles in War on the Rocks, and the title of one of them is very provocative. Does America need a dead hand fueled by AI? I read that, my immediate answer is no, we do not. This is one area where we have to be very careful, knowing what we're doing. With the immaturity of technology today, the idea of give us a lot of time to test and evaluate. This is the ultimate human decision that needs to be made, which is in the area of nuclear command and control. Now, there are aspects of information support to the entire command and control process where, of course, it's just like the intelligence enterprise getting through full motion video, getting through indications and warning. That's a different component, but to what you're getting at is a much bigger, more complex question of AI, of strategic deterrence. There are people who are focusing on that largely in academia. Day to day in my world, what I focus more on is the shorter term implications through test and evaluation, validation and verification. Are we confident that what we're going to put in place is robust, is resilient, is reliable? When I say that we started with lower consequence missions, the reason we did it that way is to understand what we're getting ourselves into. Nothing I'm talking about right now, nothing is taking humans completely out of the loop. We're still, even the full motion video analysts are still having to look at screens They're just doing it in a little bit different way now that they have assistance from computer vision technologies. So I realize we have to think very carefully on the longer term implications when it comes to big questions like nuclear, strategic deterrence, and arms races. And I'll be honest with you, and just maybe a little bit of a digression. I don't like the term, and I do not use the term arms control when it comes to AI. I think that's unhelpful when it comes to artificial intelligence. It's largely a commercial technology that can be used for commercial reasons and military reasons. I'm much more interested, at least at a starting point, of international norms and rules of behavior, which I think is extremely important to have those discussions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you. My name is Li Yang. I just wonder, maybe we should turn things around to improve the government productivity. I think the internet staff from the Defense Department and Nobel Prize have some in the National Institute of Health, and there are some organizations who identify waste and fraud and abuse in the government sector, especially military or defense. So I just thought there is some kind of revolving door who attract the government personnel to the private, and in order to build their private sectors. I just thought maybe things have to turn things around to improve the integrity of government and appreciate who can contribute with merits rather than let them humiliated and they have to go outside. So I just wonder if you can do things around like this, and maybe you have to a little bit distinguish right and wrong, integrity rather than corruption. Then things that people have that kind of integrity, that kind of appreciation of contribution to the country and to the society, they will think things around. And I thought the DOD before...
Sorry, we should get to the end of your question.
My question is, the DOD before, do you have a candidate forum? I think that should be a good starting point. Why do you have to abolish that?
Let me adjust the question, and maybe one application of AI would be to address cases of fraud and abuse. You've talked about how we can apply AI to a lot of back office functions like contracting and finance. Do you have any wins from that? I mean, are there cases where we've been able to identify, oh, there's duplicate services or there's overcharging on a particular service?
Yeah, there are these kind of initiatives are going on individually in different services and components. I think I heard you mention National Institute of Health. They're doing some remarkable work over there on using AI to get through
proposal reviews.
Proposal reviews. Yeah. So it's really interesting work. In the department, small scale though it is, we just had one success story working with the Chief Management Office, which was going through 50, 60-year-old DOD forms to find offensive terms. Not offensive probably at the time, but in retrospect, somebody received the records from a deceased spouse and found some check boxes in there that had terms that would not be acceptable today. Using, in this case, just expert systems and content filtering, writing a little bit of our code to go through and coming up with a solution in about 100 hours of work that are saving 13,000 hours of going through those forms manually. It's a small one, but it's a real and it's tangible and makes a difference. So I think there are cases like this all over every government organization. And I know you used the word integrity. I didn't quite get the context, but I will tell you integrity is at the basis of everything I do every day. And I think we could use artificial intelligence to help find cases where there might have been unnecessary bias or prejudice or statistical anomalies. There is a whole question of how you train the models in the first place that could have biases associated with them, but I think there are opportunities to do what you suggest. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Next question.
Sir, Caroline Pestel, Office of Net Assessment and OSD. You spoke about the importance at the JAIC of having individuals that are able to understand government service as well as the tech industry. In your 35 years of service, what do you feel prepared you to lead the organization you are at the intersection of national security and technology? And what would you advise other senior leaders or individuals in government in order to educate or inform themselves to be able to operate in the space that you're describing?
I wish I was a lot better prepared than I really was. The fact that I ran Project Maven and had 3 stars, somebody thought that was sufficient to put me in charge of the JAIC. And I worked very, very hard to understand the tech world. I can't even come close to what Jason understands about this world. But it requires an open mind, a receptivity to what's different about the world that I grew up in. I started off in the F-4 Phantom. Most people don't even know that airplane existed anymore. That's a long time ago. To go from an F-4 to artificial intelligence is quite a journey. I've had to reinvent my swing a few times, you might say, to get to this point. But what's important right now, in position, I'm specifically talking about a position of leadership like either Project Maven or the JAIC, is somebody that can balance the institution, knows how to get things done in the bureaucracy, but also protects and gives top cover to the real disruptors. You need disruptors right now. You need people who are willing to really challenge the norms of doing business the old way. And it's not going to be easy for them to do so. So if there's anything that I would be most proud of in my time at Maven, in addition to the technology piece, in addition to the culture change, it's protecting the people that most understand how to make a difference in the future, because there's a thirst for it. The people that are coming into the government today, uniform or not, are all seeing the world unfold before them in emerging technologies. It's not foreign to them. What they need is top cover to do it and some bottom-up innovation, and then you just got to charge at the institution. And there's going to be a lot of setbacks, and that's part of the reason I exist, is to work the institutional piece of it. But for people coming up behind, I'm very confident that 2 generations from now, we ought to be looking at, I'll use the military term here, an 03 or an 04 that is being earmarked for a position of future leadership, and watch them very carefully. Rather than try to retrain us at a 30-plus year point, it's very hard to do. We have our own biases built in. Find somebody that understands this, but also has the credibility to work within the organization to get things moving. It's one thing to be a disruptor and then nothing ever happens because you just break glass and nobody's there to pick it up. You need both of it. And I think that's a really important point, is to push hard and push against the system and push against the bureaucracy, but you need someone to help you do that. And it's a combination of above and below that I think is to be most effective.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for your talk today. My name is Ololade Fatumbi. I'm from the U.S. Department of State. I'm also a science fellow. I work at the Office of Japan Affairs, and I work on science and technology cooperation between the U.S. and Japan. My question is so working at JAIC, I can't imagine the types of the newest technologies of AI you have the ability to witness and have insights from. And being that our country benefits a lot from innovation from foreign talent, for example, you mentioned Carnegie Mellon, which has a large majority of their students from countries, and in particular China. Do you think there's some projects on AI that cannot be worked on with foreign national students, or companies which employ a lot of foreign national students? I was wondering this in particularly. Also, what about countries who are known to be allies with them? Do you think that there's instances where we cannot collaborate or have these researchers from foreign nationals working on these AI technology as it relates to our national security interests? I'm asking this mostly because I'm working a lot with Japan, which is known as our ally, and I can imagine there's instances where we might not always want to collaborate on these really important technologies in AI, even if they're countries that are our allies.
Yeah, it's always going to be a balance. So I'll divide the answer up into sort of 2 parts. Those that are allies and partners that we're extremely interested in working with on AI. We're all at sort of these almost nascent stages in every country that we've talked to. And I have a part of the JAIC is strategic engagement and policy. I believe we've had conversations with 45 plus countries now, just on a very basic level. Here's our DoD AI strategy. Do you have an equivalent strategy? Where are you going? What are some projects that we can work on? So the idea of having partnerships is one of our inherent strengths in the democratic Western societies. That's important. Now, they have to balance that against national security on the academic institution piece. Some of the best talent in the world in this area comes from outside the United States. The United States still leads the world and leaders of artificial intelligence research and commercial production and delivery, but there's such tremendous talent coming from countries all across the globe. They come in and study our institutions. Can we keep them? Can we keep them and help work together on projects? But I do have to balance the national security piece of this. The initial projects we started with Maven and with the JAIC were unclassified for the reason that we were working with some companies that didn't have people that had security clearances. And the data was not classified data. It was a project that was unclassified. That was a good starting point, but as we get into more warfighting oriented projects, that will become a little bit different question. So it is a balance between national security and global cooperation. In AI, so much of this is already being done in open source and commercial ways that it's very hard to clamp down and restrict it. It could be a boomerang effect that it actually hurts us more than it helps us. So I'm interested in talent coming in from the outside, and then can we keep the talent here and work together? But I do have concerns that if somebody comes in, takes intellectual property, brings it back to somewhere like China and then uses it against us, I'm not interested in that scenario. So we got to figure out how to do both effectively, and that's not easy.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, General Shanahan. Thank you very much. I'm Zoe Stanley Lockman from the RSIS Military Transformations Program in Singapore.
Yes.
And I had two questions, if you wouldn't mind, both related to data. The first question is, we know that there are significant stovepipes between the data coming, not only between services, but also between platforms. What are the kinds of efforts that the JAIC could be involved in to reduce those stovepipes? And the second question is also related to alliances. I'm wondering if we imagine a world several years from now where we see some of these data management issues that you've described as a burden-sharing problem, and our allies can help structure and vet some of the data. How do we get there, and what are the biggest barriers we would face? Thanks.
No, so the second part of your question, I agree with you. That's part of what a collaboration might look like, is how do we share data with each other? How do we help each other through the data management process? And through the JAIC, we are in initial discussions with Singapore on some HADR projects that we might work on together. So when I say that if we were to get into a partnership with any other country, I think we would look at entire delivery pipeline rather than just one narrow aspect. Where can we help each other out? And that's a good one to discuss. On the first part of your question, which was a data management question, right? And specifically what again?
How to reduce some of the stovepipes between the data coming from platforms and services.
Good. That's a very good question. Again, one of the reasons the JAIC exists, and I use the bumper sticker of centralized direction, common foundation, decentralized development and experimentation. And I use that for a reason, because I don't want it to be seen as we're a bureaucratic entity that's enforcing ourselves upon all components and services. But where we should be the most helpful in areas like this, where we can get policies, procedures, and standards published and promulgated such that it enforces some of the things that have to be done. You know, we can't get to a future of digital modernization unless we fix some of these data access, data quality problems. And they're big. They're not insurmountable. And we're talking about mostly machine learning and reinforcement learning, maybe a little bit different in some other aspects of AI. But in the cases of some of the projects we have going on right now, which are machine learning projects, data is central to what we're trying to do. So we do have some work to do to get that data cleaned up and have access to it. When we started the predictive maintenance, it seemed like a fairly simple problem. Immediately ran into, well, this part of the Army has data over here, this part of the Army has data. How do we get those data together? The Air Force calls it a turtleback. The Navy calls it a horseshoe. Can we do some natural language processing to show that those two terms are the same, and then we're able to work with it? That's what we've embarked on. So each line of effort, in my mind, is going to spark 5, 6, 7, 10 different lines of effort on the enabler functions of this. And I agree, one of the things we must be able to do in our role as the JAIC is to have some enforcement mechanisms to get us faster towards the future of digital modernization.
Great. Thank you so much, sir.
we have 2 more questions, and I think we have time for both if we keep them short.
Sydney Friedberg, Breaking Defense, deputy editor and asker of long questions, but I'll try. You said very convincingly that no, we are not going to do the 1983 Matthew Broderick movie thing and start out with AI controlling the nukes, which is good. What is the step-by-step progression from, hey, here is an AI for this very limited, narrow, benign function. It's checking sand intake in engines, or it's monitoring fire breaks specifically, as opposed to any of the 100 other things that you were seeing in a disaster. How do you move up from that to things like the Atlas automated target recognition system, which the Army is working on, to things that automatically engage, say, incoming missiles, to things that may actually have some automated component that's looking at a human target, where human loss of life is in fact going to happen if things go right? What's the series of steps, and how long does it take to get there in a way that you think is ethical and responsible?
Yeah, so let me go back to what I said earlier about AI now and AI next. The position I inhabit here as the JAIC director, I'm focusing on really getting to the fielding. So we're always going to start with limited, narrow use cases, as we were going to call them, on, say, can we take some AI capability and put it into a small quadcopter drone that will make it easier to clear out a cave if that's what you need to do it, and really prove that it works before we ever get it to a scaled production. On the other side, on the AI Next, this is what we have the research arms of the department working very hard on, are those cases of more advanced uses of artificial intelligence in future weapon systems. But throughout, whether it's AI now or AI Next, they all rest on the foundation of policy such as our autonomy and weapon system policy. Those aren't ever done in a vacuum. If we're going to develop the systems you're talking about, they will be based on the bedrock of policies, authorities, how we're going to test it, who gets to approve it as it goes through the sequence of events. So I'm very comfortable saying our approach, even though it is emerging technology, even though it unfolds very quickly before our eyes, it will still be done in a deliberate and rigorous way so that we know what we're getting when we field it. So there may be something that we're working on now that all of a sudden produces great value 4 years from now, but between now and those 4 years, we'll have a very clear understanding of what it can do and what it can't do. And that will be through experimentation, that'll be through modeling and simulation, and that will be in war games. We've done that with every piece of technology we've ever used, and I don't expect this is going to be any different. So that's really how I would answer that, Sydney.
Last question.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you for your time. General, thank you for your time. My name's Ade Alato. I'm a student at the National Defense University, and I'm writing my thesis on China and AI. And as you know, General, China released in 2017 their new generation AI development plan in 2017 with multiple targets with the end goal of leading the world in AI in 2030. And my question is this: on the unclassified level, can you share with us what metrics the JAIC is using to measure success?
Our success or their success?
Our success.
Our success. It's a really good question. So this whole idea of metrics and return on investment, very difficult for AI. We're just now laying out what those metrics need to be. And you could go to the grand strategic level, compare the United States allies and partners in our AI development to where China and Russia are. Is that a useful exercise or not? And then you could get down to what compute do they use? What frameworks do they use? What do we use? Is there a comparative advantage, disadvantage there? That's one way. But internal to the JAIC, I'm down all the way into what metrics are we going to measure to determine that we successfully adopted and integrate a capability that is an AI-enabled capability. Ultimately, did it get adopted by a user? Did the user say, I want this capability, I didn't plan for it originally, thanks for helping me fund it. From this point on, we'll take the funding and we'll sustain it and we'll make it better over time. So I will never be able to determine success in the JAIC. The success will be determined by the user. Are they satisfied with what they got from us or not? And there's all these other measures of success, like international engagement and policy, that's separate. But in terms of delivering capability, there's everything from test and evaluation metrics, intersection over union, precision recall, all these words, that means something, all the way up to, did we give it to somebody who said, we've got it from here, i.e. it's scaled across the department and it's no longer on the left side of the technology valley of death. So there's a lot we need to look at. We've just laid out a couple of pages worth of useful metrics. Now I have to distill those into the most useful series that tell us, are we on track or off track? And that's really what we're getting into right now.
Thank you.
Sir, thank you first for spending this time with us. Second, I've expressed my gratitude to you before, but never with a loudspeaker. So thank you for not only being one of the best transition partners that we had for IARPA, but also leading on values. I think you really embody the kind of humility and candor and thoughtfulness that we want to see in our national leaders. So please join me in thanking General
Thanks, Jason.
Shanahan.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity.